question 31, SAT number 11, same thing. It's a figure question. Oh, we're going to figure out how to answer this one here. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple one. The question says, data presented in figures 1 and 2 best support the conclusion that compared with guppies from high-predation environments, guppies from low-predation environments were more likely to something. So this means to solve this, what we should probably do, even before going to the answer choices, is go back to two figures that we got represented here, figures 1 and 2. And what we want to do is we want to look through both of those for basically what do they say about guppies from low predation environments, what are sort of the patterns that they tell us about, and then see if we can use that to sort of predict our answer choice in advance. So looking on this one, here we have low predation environment, low predation environment. And what we're going to say, this is measuring the mean number of offspring. Okay, so this is the average number of offspring that these guppies have. And the main trend that we notice is that those in the low predation environment have less, right? Smaller number of offspring. You can see that here. So the high predation, higher number, low predation, we have these lower numbers. So that's the first trend that we can predict, right? And remember, we're basing this off of both figures 1 and 2, so we should end up looking at both. So then we go to figure 2. Figure 2, first, we measure embryo mass, right? The mass of the embryos for these two. We have the same situation, high predation south slope, low predation south slope, high predation north slope, low predation north slope. So we start here. Let's look at the low predation. And basically, we're going to see the opposite trend, right? Whereas the other one, we saw that the low predation columns were smaller. In this case, they're going to be higher. So what this means is that those in the low predation environments have a higher mean embryo mass, and they have a lower number of offspring. So that's what we're going to predict for our answer choice. Lower number of offspring, higher embryo mass. So start with this, have fewer offspring. Okay, this first point is good. And then this, reach full maturity sooner. So what we want to do is we want to avoid this right here, this fewer offspring, right? This is sort of what we would call a red herring, right? Because it has the right language, it's too attractive, but it's actually this part here that's going to make it wrong, which is reach full maturity sooner. Based on the passage, this is wrong, right? They actually reach full maturity later. But honestly, regardless of whether it was in the passage, this is correct or not, we could eliminate this option just solely based on the fact that the charts that were given, they don't measure maturity. They don't measure the rate of maturity. So since they don't measure that, we can just eliminate it outright. Now, for this reason, we'll get rid of A. Then we have the next one here, which is that guppies from low predation environments they will be smaller and better. Let's look back at that in a moment, and have greater mean embryo mass, right? So this greater mean embryo mass, that doesn't match what we already said, right? We already said they would have higher, so this point's correct, right? Let's do a check there. This part here, though, is a little bit confusing, but let's just think about it. It's part of a smaller litter. If you're part of a smaller litter, that means that on average, your parents are having a smaller number of offspring, right? So smaller litter is going to be smaller number of offspring. So this one works as well. So we can keep this option. It's probably going to be our answer. Now let's look at the difference between this, fewer offspring and part of a smaller litter, right? Basically, they use this concept, this thing called synonymizing, right? I know it's a terrible name, but what it does on the SAT, what we mean by that is that oftentimes what will happen is the SAT will have a straightforward way of saying something, and they'll just, it's like a student who just takes a course, they go through it, and they're just replacing words just to sort of obscure the right answer, right? And that's what they're doing here. So they translated fewer offspring to be part of a smaller litter, just to make it a little more challenging. But we're more adept at that. We're wary. We know this is a good answer choice. C says higher rate of survival. Honestly, we're going to stop right here. Again, like I said before, it's not measuring survival. So even if it's true based on the text, it's not going to be true based on the graph. We can eliminate this option because it's not measuring rate of survival. We have D, produce a greater number of offspring and have a greater mean embryo mass. This pretty much just gets this part right, greater mean embryo mass, but not this part, greater number of offspring. We're actually going to have less offspring, so this part makes it wrong. It's the whole answer choice wrong, which leaves us with B, which is our correct answer.